My 4-year-old daughter was standing in the open front doorway in her Christmas pajamas, crying so hard her whole body trembled. "Mommy, don't come inside," she whispered. "Daddy said she'll hurt me again." Somewhere behind her, a woman laughed. For a moment I forgot how to breathe. It was 6:18 on the evening of December 22nd, and wet snow was beginning to cling to the sidewalks of our neighborhood outside Stafford, Virginia. I'd come straight from Dulles after 8 months on a classified overseas assignment. My wool coat was still buttoned over my dress uniform. A green duffel bag hung from one shoulder, and tucked under my other arm was a stuffed bear in a little red Santa hat. I'd imagined Lily racing down the porch steps to meet me. Instead, she stood barefoot on the cold tile, one hand locked around the doorframe, the other pushed out in front of her like she was trying to stop a car. "Sweetheart," I said gently. "Look at me." Her cheeks were streaked with tears, her breath coming in short hiccups. Behind her the living room glowed with warm light. The tree stood in its usual corner, but everything else felt off. My silver star ornaments were missing. So were the framed photos from our trip to Cape May. A new wooden sign hung above the fireplace, the Hale family, Daniel, Vanessa, and Lily. My stomach clenched. Then I heard that voice again. Lily pushed the door shut. "Your father said no visitors." Vanessa. My younger half-sister stepped into view, wearing my cream-colored Christmas sweater, the one my mother had given me before she passed. She had a wine glass in her hand and was smiling like she'd been waiting for an audience. "Becca," she said. "You're early." Daniel appeared behind her, a bourbon and eggnog in one hand. My husband of 11 years looked at me the way you'd look at a delivery driver who'd shown up with the wrong package. "You weren't supposed to be back until after New Year's," he said. "I got released early." "You should have called." I stared at him. Why was our daughter afraid to let me into my own house? Lily lowered her arms just enough for me to see a fading bruise circling her left wrist. I crouched down slowly. "What happened, baby?" She glanced over her shoulder before she could answer. Vanessa spoke first. "She fell at preschool." Lily's eyes dropped to the floor. I'd spent most of my career learning to notice what people were careful not to say. Daniel already had his phone raised to chest height, camera aimed at me. Vanessa stepped in close and brushed hard against my shoulder. "She's been acting out ever since you abandoned her," she said. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I wanted to grab my daughter, push past both of them, and demand the truth until someone gave it to me. But Daniel was waiting for exactly that. So instead I slipped my hand into my coat pocket, started recording audio, and kept my voice even. "Lily," I said. "Did somebody hurt you?" Daniel's smile vanished. He reached for her arm. "Go upstairs. Your real family is talking." That was the moment I understood, this wasn't a homecoming that had gone sideways. They'd planned for me to walk into this. I stepped over the threshold before Daniel could block me. "My name is still on the deed," I said. "You don't get to decide I can't come into my own home." Vanessa crossed her arms but shifted just enough to let me by. Daniel stayed close behind, phone still trained on me. The house smelled like cinnamon candles and baked ham. It should have felt like Christmas. Instead it felt like stepping into someone else's life. I set my duffel by the stairs and looked around slowly. The pictures above the fireplace had all changed. The photo of Daniel and me dancing at my retirement ceremony from my first enlistment was gone, along with the one of Lily on my shoulders at Yorktown Beach. In their place hung a professionally printed portrait, Daniel, Vanessa, and Lily, all in matching red sweaters, Vanessa's hand resting on Lily's shoulder as though she'd always belonged there. My eyes drifted to the coat closet, women's boots, women's scarves, a long beige coat that definitely wasn't mine. She hadn't just been visiting. She'd been living here. "How long?" I asked quietly. Daniel shrugged. "A few months. We needed help. You moved my sister into my house." Vanessa laughed. You make it sound so dramatic. I looked at Lily. Honey, when did Aunt Vanessa start sleeping here? Before she could answer, Daniel cut her off. That's enough. No, I said. It isn't. Lily stood frozen by the staircase. When Vanessa snapped her fingers, Lily flinched, actually flinched. And that small movement hit me harder than anything either of them had said. Children don't flinch around people they trust. I followed her into the kitchen. She stopped in front of the refrigerator, then looked toward Vanessa before opening it. May I have some water? Vanessa nodded without looking up from her phone. You know where the cups are. My heart sank. 4-year-olds don't ask permission to get water in their own home, not unless they've learned there's a price for not asking. I crouched next to her while she filled a small plastic cup. Sweetheart, I whispered, are you okay? She stared into the cup. I missed you, Mommy. Those 4 words nearly broke me. I wrapped my arms around her, and she hugged me back, for exactly 2 seconds, before pulling away, panic flooding her eyes. I can't. Why not? She glanced toward Vanessa again. I'll get in trouble. I stood slowly. Daniel had been watching the whole exchange. You see, he said, you confuse her. I ignored him and walked toward the hallway that led to my home office. The keypad blinked red. My code no longer worked. What did you change in there? It's my office now. Your office? You've been gone. I tried the handle anyway. Locked. You had no right. I had every right. He reached for a folder on the dining table and slid several pages toward me. I figured you'd react like this. Across the top of the first page were words I never expected to see. Petition for legal separation. Attached was a proposed temporary custody agreement. Daniel wanted primary custody. He wanted the house. He wanted me limited to supervised visits whenever my military duties allowed it. I looked up. You've already hired a lawyer? A while ago. Vanessa smiled over the rim of her wine glass. If you sign it tonight, we can all move forward. I looked between them, then back at Lily, who was quietly coloring at the kitchen table, pressing so hard the paper was starting to tear. I slid the papers back. I'm not signing anything. Vanessa stepped closer, almost shoulder to shoulder with me. My advice, she said softly, don't make this ugly. Then she bumped my shoulder, not hard, just enough. Daniel's phone tilted up again. Still recording. Waiting for the moment I lost control. I understood exactly what they were doing. I took one slow breath, then another, and instead of raising my voice, I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. Stafford County Sheriff's Office. My 4-year-old daughter just told me someone in this house has been hurting her. I'd like to request a welfare check. Daniel didn't look worried. He smiled. You really should have called sooner, he said calmly. I already called them this afternoon. At that exact moment, red and blue light swept across the living room windows, painting the Christmas tree in alternating colors. Daniel leaned close enough that only I could hear him. Now let's see who they believe. The first deputy through the door was a man about my age with gray at his temples. A younger woman followed, notepad in hand. Evening, he said. I'm Deputy Collins. Who made the call? I did, I said. Before I could add anything, Daniel stepped forward with a tired smile. My wife's been overseas for months. She just got home unexpectedly. He looked almost apologetic. I think she's under a lot of stress. The deputy nodded politely. We'll talk to everyone separately. Daniel didn't hesitate. I'd appreciate that. His confidence unsettled me more than anything else that night. He wasn't nervous. He was prepared. Within minutes we were split into different rooms. Deputy Collins spoke with me in the dining room while his partner talked to Daniel in the living room. I told him exactly what Lily had whispered to me. I showed him the bruise on her wrist. I explained that my deployment had restricted regular contact for security reasons. He listened carefully, then asked quietly, "Do you have any proof she was abused?" "I have my daughter's words." "I understand." He wasn't dismissing me. He was being honest. Meanwhile, Daniel was already handing over paperwork. A few minutes later, Deputy Collins returned holding a manila folder. "I need you to explain something." Inside was a police report filed that morning, 12 hours before my flight even landed. According to it, Daniel feared I might turn violent after returning from deployment. I stared at the date. That's not possible. There are also text messages. He handed me printed screenshots. They appeared to come from my number. One read, "If you keep Lily from me, somebody's going to regret it." Another, "I'm done playing nice." My stomach dropped. "I never sent these." Daniel spoke from across the room. "Maybe you don't remember." I looked straight at him. "I remember every message I've ever sent my husband." Deputy Collins asked if anyone else had access to my accounts. I thought about it. My iPad. Daniel looked away for just a fraction of a second. "Almost nothing, but after 22 years in uniform I'd learned that the smallest hesitation often carried the biggest truth." The deputy made a note. Daniel wasn't finished. "I also have video." He played a short clip on his phone, me, shouting in our driveway almost a year earlier. No context, no beginning, no end. Just me, raising my voice. What the deputy couldn't see was why Daniel had left Lily alone in his SUV outside a grocery store while he ran in for one item. She'd been strapped into her car seat for nearly 20 minutes in 90-degree heat. I'd screamed because I thought she might die in that car. Now it looked like I'd simply lost my temper for no reason. Clip after clip painted the same picture: furious wife, calm husband, worried father. The younger deputy came downstairs holding Lily's hand. She knelt beside her. "Honey, can you tell me who hurt your wrist?" Lily looked toward Daniel. He didn't say a word. He didn't need to. She lowered her head. "I don't know." My heart broke, not because she'd lied, but because she was terrified. The deputies exchanged a look. "We're contacting Child Protective Services," Collins said. "We'd also like a pediatrician to examine her." Within the hour, Lily was on her way to Mary Washington Hospital with a child welfare investigator. I reached for her as she passed. "I'll see you soon, sweetheart." She clutched the stuffed bear I'd brought home. "I love you, Mommy." "I love you more." I assumed she'd come home with me afterward. Instead, the investigator pulled me aside outside the hospital. "Until we sort out these conflicting allegations, Lily can't go home with either parent tonight." Those words hit harder than any battlefield briefing I'd ever received. "What? Where will she go?" "We have an approved emergency placement, your Aunt Carol." I leaned against the wall by the emergency entrance. The Christmas lights strung along the hospital shrubs blurred through my tears. I'd come home to protect my daughter, and I couldn't even tuck her in. Back in the parking lot, my phone rang. Colonel Denise Carter. "Rebecca," she said gently, "I've already been notified about the domestic incident." I closed my eyes. Word traveled fast in the military. "If criminal allegations continue," she said, "your security clearance may be reviewed. I need you to stay calm." "I am calm." "No," she said softly. "You're disciplined. Don't lose that now." That night I checked into a Holiday Inn Express off Route 1, since Daniel had already changed the locks. At 2:07 a.m. I sat on the edge of the bed, still in my uniform trousers, staring at the little Christmas stocking I'd packed for Lily months earlier. I wanted to drive back to the house and demand answers. Instead, I called military legal assistance. The attorney who answered listened quietly, then asked one question. "What evidence were they hoping you'd destroy by losing your temper?" I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I met Rachel Kim at 9 the next morning, in a small office just off Courthouse Road in Stafford. She wasn't what I'd pictured, no dramatic speeches, no expensive suit. Navy cardigan, sensible shoes, reading glasses sliding down her nose as she worked through my paperwork. After nearly an hour she folded her hands. "Rebecca, I'm going to tell you something you probably don't want to hear." "I'm listening." "This case isn't about proving your husband cheated. It isn't about proving he's selfish either." She looked me straight in the eye. "It's about proving your daughter isn't safe." That sentence changed everything. Until then, every thought in my head had circled around Daniel and Vanessa. Rachel quietly redirected my focus back to Lily. "If we chase revenge," she said, "we lose sight of the child. Protect Lily first. The truth will take care of the rest." For the first time since landing in Virginia, someone was giving me a plan instead of sympathy. She asked me to reconstruct the last 8 months, week by week, who had seen Daniel, who had watched Lily, who lived close enough to notice. One name came to mind immediately: Marjorie Delaney, our next-door neighbor. 72 years old, retired after 35 years as an elementary school secretary, and she knew more about our street than the homeowners association ever would. When I knocked on her door just after lunch, she opened it before I could ring the bell. "There you are," she said. Her sweatshirt read "Not retired, just done with stupid people." For the first time in days I almost smiled. She pulled me into a hug. "Oh, honey, I didn't know where else you'd go. You came to the right porch." Her house smelled like coffee and fresh banana bread. She poured 2 mugs before I'd even sat down. "I figured you'd be back before Christmas," she said. "I was." She shook her head. "No, I figured you'd come looking for answers." I stared at her. "You knew something was wrong." I knew something stopped feeling right. She disappeared into her den and came back with a spiral notebook nearly an inch thick. "I write everything down." "You, what?" "Done it for 30 years. She handed it to me. Every page was full of dates, times, license plates, deliveries, arguments, visitors. My grandson calls it an old lady's hobby. I call it paying attention. I flipped to August, 3 weeks after I'd deployed. One entry caught my eye immediately: August 18th, young blonde woman moved into the Hale house, 4 suitcases, stayed overnight. Another, September 2nd, Lily crying outside for nearly 20 minutes, Daniel not home, blonde woman on the phone inside. Then, October 11th, preschool bus arrived, Lily never came out. My hands tightened on the notebook. "You saw all this?" "I did. And nobody called me." Marjorie sighed. "We thought you already knew." I swallowed hard. She led me to her kitchen window. "See that?" A Ring camera was mounted beneath the porch roof. "Bought it after somebody stole my bird feeder." She grinned. "Turns out it catches more than squirrels." She pulled up the app on her tablet. The first clip showed Vanessa arriving with grocery bags, nothing unusual. The second showed Daniel carrying furniture inside, still nothing. Then she played one from early November. Vanessa opening the back door, Lily stepping outside in nothing but socks. The on-screen temperature read 38 degrees. Vanessa pointed at the patio. "Stay there until you learn to listen." The door shut. Lily sat down on the concrete, hugging her knees. 5 minutes passed. 10. 15. Nobody came back. My stomach twisted. Marjorie paused the video. "I almost called the sheriff that day." "You should have." "I know." Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she played another clip. Not much to see this time, but plenty to hear. Vanessa's voice drifted over the fence: "You'd better stop crying before your daddy gets home." Then, "If your mommy loved you, she wouldn't have left." I closed my eyes and for a second couldn't breathe at all. Marjorie reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I've got months of these. Rachel had been right. Evidence, not anger. As I gathered my things to go, Marjorie stopped me. Oh, one more thing. I noticed a moving company back in October. What were they moving? Carried 6 boxes out of your home office and loaded every one into a storage truck. I went cold. An hour later, Rachel was going through my bank records when she suddenly leaned forward. Rebecca, I think I just found what those boxes were hiding. She turned her monitor toward me. A transfer of $78,400 had moved out of my deployment savings and into a joint business account owned by Daniel and Vanessa. I stared at the number. It wasn't just money, it was 8 months of deployment pay, hardship pay, and the extra savings I'd set aside for Lily's college fund. There has to be a mistake. She shook her head slowly. I wish there were. She pulled up the transfer details, authorized 6 weeks earlier using a financial power of attorney. I recognized my own signature immediately. I signed that before I deployed. Most military families do. You gave Daniel authority to pay bills. She clicked through more documents. The problem is he didn't stop there. What else? He refinanced the house. And opened a home equity line of credit. I felt sick. He couldn't have. He could. You gave him financial authority while you were overseas. I trusted him. I know. There was no judgment in her voice, only facts. She spread the paperwork across the table, mortgage documents, bank transfers, corporate filings, then circled one name with her pen. Hale Family Support Services LLC. What is that? She pulled up the Virginia Business Registry. The company had been formed 4 months earlier. Owner, Daniel Hale. Managing Partner, Vanessa Price. Stated purpose, providing support services for military families. I laughed, not because anything was funny, but because I genuinely didn't know what else to do. My husband started a business helping military families, with my deployment money. That's what it looks like. No office, no website, no employees, no clients, just a P.O. box in Fredericksburg. Rachel opened the account statements. The first charge made my jaw clench, a luxury SUV lease under Vanessa's name. Then designer furniture. Then a beach vacation in North Carolina. Then jewelry, spa weekends, boutique shopping. None of it had anything to do with military families. Daniel hadn't built a business, he'd built a lifestyle, funded by my paycheck. Rachel quietly organized the papers into stacks. This gets worse. I was afraid you'd say that. She slid over another document, an invitation to the Stafford Regional Chamber of Commerce's Holiday Community Leadership Gala on December 24, honoring Daniel Hale with the Community Family Champion Award for extraordinary support of military families during overseas deployments. I stared at the page. They're giving him an award for pretending to be the husband you actually were supposed to have. Neither of us spoke for a long moment. Finally I whispered, I spent last Christmas in a secured operations center on the other side of the world. Rachel nodded. And he spent it building this image. That afternoon I drove to Aunt Carol's for my first supervised visit with Lily. She ran into my arms before the social worker had even finished opening the door. For a few wonderful minutes she was just my little girl again. Coloring Christmas trees, stacking wooden blocks, listening to the Polar Express. Then, completely out of nowhere, she looked up. Mommy? Yes, sweetheart? Are you leaving again? The question caught me off guard. No. She looked unsure. Daddy said the army always takes you away. The army asked me to serve. Will they ask again? I didn't answer right away, because honestly I didn't know. Instead I kissed the top of her head. I'm here today. She leaned into me. I like today. Those 4 words hurt more than anything Daniel had said to me yet. After the visit, Rachel called. I've got an offer from Daniel's attorney. I pulled into a Starbucks parking lot. What does he want? She read from the email: if I withdrew the abuse allegations, agreed to primary custody, and signed the separation agreement, Daniel would return half the money. Half, I repeated, like he's negotiating over a used truck instead of our daughter's future. For one terrifying second I actually considered it. Maybe ending things quickly would spare Lily, maybe I could start over somewhere new. Rachel must have heard the silence. Rebecca, I'm listening. He isn't offering you peace. A pause. He's offering you pieces of what already belongs to you. I closed my eyes. She was right. This had never been about the money, or the house, or even Daniel. It had always been about Lily. The next morning during another supervised visit, Lily sat quietly with a box of crayons and drew instead of talking. When she finished, she handed me the picture. 3 stick figures: Vanessa, Lily, Daniel. Daniel was holding a phone. Vanessa's hand was raised. Above them all was a tiny red camera. I couldn't stop staring at it. At first I thought it was just a random detail a 4-year-old had scribbled in. Then Rachel leaned closer. Ask her about the camera. The following afternoon we met again at Aunt Carol's, the investigator waiting in the next room while Lily and I sat on the living room rug building a block castle. I waited until she seemed at ease, then picked up the drawing. Sweetheart, can Mommy ask you something? She nodded. What's this little black box? She glanced at it. The camera. What camera? The one Daddy put on the bookshelf. My heartbeat slowed, not from calm, but because every instinct told me to listen carefully. What did the camera do? It watched. Watched what? She shrugged. Me. What else? I kept my voice soft. She lowered her eyes. Daddy said when Mommy came home, she stopped. It's okay. I had to stand by the door. My chest tightened. Why? So the camera could see? Rachel and I exchanged a glance. What was the camera supposed to see? I asked. She whispered so quietly I nearly missed it. Daddy said Mommy would get mad. She looked ashamed. I didn't want you to get mad. I reached over and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. You never did anything wrong. She leaned into me, and for several seconds neither of us said anything. Then she spoke again, and I'll never forget it. Daddy made me practice. My blood ran cold. Practice what? The crying. I felt the air leave my lungs. What do you mean? She took a shaky breath. When Mommy comes home, stand by the door. Cry really hard. Don't let her in. I couldn't speak. Every terrible piece suddenly clicked into place: the rehearsed tears, Daniel filming me, Vanessa provoking me, the separation papers waiting on the table. None of it had been spontaneous. It was a setup, and Lily had been rehearsing her part for weeks. Rachel excused herself to make a phone call. When she came back she looked more determined than I'd ever seen her. We're filing an emergency preservation request. For what? The camera, if it still exists. If we're lucky. Within hours a judge had signed an order requiring Daniel to preserve every device and every piece of security footage connected to the property. By the next morning his attorney responded: the camera had disappeared. Convenient, Rachel muttered. She wasn't ready to give up, and neither was I. That afternoon I drove back to Marjorie's. She answered before I reached the porch. Knew you'd be back. We're looking for a security camera. She thought for a moment. Never saw the camera itself. I nodded, figuring as much. Then she smiled. But I did see Vanessa throwing something away. She led me inside and pulled up the Ring app again. About 3 weeks ago. The footage showed Vanessa carrying a black trash bag to her SUV, tossing it in the back, and driving off. Do you know where she went? No, I sighed. So that's it, then. Marjorie frowned. Not exactly. She zoomed into the frame. You see why I save everything? I leaned in and almost missed it. Resting in the open trunk, half buried under wrapping paper, was a white camera box, its serial number sticker angled directly toward her driveway camera. Rachel practically grabbed the tablet. Can you zoom further? Marjorie grinned. My grandson says I zoom better than the FBI. After a few tries, the numbers became legible. Rachel called the manufacturer immediately. 45 minutes later she hung up. The physical unit's probably gone, but the cloud account is still active. The preservation order had reached the company before anyone could delete the footage. The next morning we sat in front of Rachel's office computer as the first recovered clip loaded. It ran 32 seconds. 32 seconds was enough. Vanessa stood in the hallway with Lily in front of her. Stop crying, she snapped, and when Lily couldn't, Vanessa pinched her arm hard enough to make her scream. Daniel adjusted the camera angle. No, he said calmly. Let her cry a little more. Then he looked straight into the lens. When Rebecca loses it, we'll finally have what we need. I couldn't watch another second. I pushed back from the desk and made it to the bathroom just in time to be sick. When I came back, Rachel was quietly closing the laptop. There are more. I don't want to see them. You don't have to. I sat down heavily. Every part of me wanted to drive straight to the house and confront them both. Rachel set a folder in front of me. That's exactly what they're hoping you'll do. She smiled gently. No more giving them what they want. She opened the last page of the evidence log, one line that stopped us both cold. Daniel's voice, perfectly clear. Once we win custody, half of Rebecca's military pension solves all our money problems. That recording should have ended everything. It didn't. I had Daniel admitting he'd planned to provoke me. I had Vanessa hurting my daughter on camera. I had proof they intended to use my pension to fund their future. And yet 3 days later, Rachel called with news I didn't expect. They're challenging all of it. On what grounds? Claiming the footage was obtained illegally. I laughed, exhausted. They filmed themselves committing child abuse. I know. Somehow we're the problem. Welcome to family court. It wasn't sarcasm. It was experience talking. Daniel's attorney argued the videos lacked context. Vanessa claimed she'd only pinched Lily to stop her from running toward the stairs. Daniel insisted his comment about my pension had been a joke. None of it held together, but it slowed everything down. Instead of an immediate custody change, the judge ordered more evaluations, more interviews, more paperwork, more waiting. Waiting was something the Army had taught me. Waiting for transport, for intelligence, for orders. But waiting while my daughter slept somewhere else was an entirely different kind of pain. Then another blow landed. Colonel Denise Carter called me into her office at Fort Belvoir and closed the door. This isn't disciplinary. But because of the allegations and the ongoing investigation, she slid a folder across the desk. Your security clearance is being placed under administrative review. I looked at the paper. Temporary reassignment, no classified systems, no intelligence briefings. Desk duty. When does it start? Tomorrow. She studied my face. You expected to be angry. I am. Anger won't change the paperwork. For the first time since coming home, I felt exhausted, not physically, but all the way through. 23 years of work suddenly felt fragile. Word traveled fast through the base, the way it always does. One spouse I barely knew stopped me outside the commissary. I heard things are pretty messy. I forced a smile. There are always two sides to every story, she added. She meant well, probably. The word stayed with me the rest of the day anyway. That evening in my hotel room I almost called Daniel. I wanted to scream at him, ask how he could do this to Lily. Instead I opened a blank notebook. Dr. Harris, the therapist Rachel had recommended, had suggested writing letters to Lily that I wouldn't send. Not yet. The first began with a single line, "Dear Lily, none of this is your fault." I filled 6 pages before I realized I was crying. The next morning Rachel had another stack of records waiting. "I traced the LLC," she said. "It never helped a single military family. It helped exactly 2 people." She pointed to highlighted transactions: Vanessa's SUV, Vanessa's credit cards, Vanessa's shopping trips. Then she turned to a final page, a donation to the Stafford Regional Chamber of Commerce, listed as sponsorship for the Holiday Community Leadership Gala. Guess who's receiving the Community Family Champion Award on Christmas Eve? I didn't need to answer. "And that donation," she added, "came straight out of your deployment savings." I rubbed my forehead. So he used my money to buy himself an award. Exactly. 2 days later my phone rang from an unfamiliar local number. "Rebecca Hale?" "Yes." "Tom Reynolds, chairman of the Stafford VFW Holiday Fundraiser. We'd be honored if you'd attend." I recognized the event immediately. "I'm not sure that's appropriate." He chuckled. "Daniel specifically requested you. He wants to surprise everyone by bringing you up on stage." My stomach tightened. "For what?" "He wants people to see what a strong military marriage looks like." After we hung up, Rachel leaned back in her chair. "He thinks you won't show." I wasn't planning to. "I think you should." She smiled. Sometimes the best place to tell the truth is exactly where the lie was supposed to be celebrated. By Christmas Eve morning, seemingly the whole county knew my name, just not the truth. Someone had posted a 30-second video the night before, me on my own front porch, knocking, demanding to see Lily. No frightened child, no bruises, no Vanessa, no context. Just me. The caption read, "Returning soldier suffers emotional breakdown after deployment." By breakfast it had hundreds of shares. By lunch, strangers were calling me unstable. One comment stuck with me longer than the rest. "That little girl deserves a mother who actually wants to be home." I stared at the screen until the words blurred, then turned the phone off. There was no point arguing with people who'd only been shown half the story. Around noon I drove to Aunt Carol's for my scheduled visit. Lily met me at the door in fuzzy red socks, hiding something behind her back. "I made you something." "What is it?" She smiled for the first time in days. "A surprise." She held out a small ornament made from popsicle sticks and glitter, with crooked little letters spelling "Mommy came back." I couldn't speak. I just pulled her in. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too." She touched the medals on my uniform. "Are you staying? For always?" I smiled through tears. "I'm going to do everything I can." She nodded like that answer was enough. Sometimes children don't need promises, just honesty. When the visit ended, Rachel met me outside. "You look better." "Lily helps." She glanced at the ornament in my hand. "That's worth more than any courtroom win." She was right, I'd nearly forgotten why I was fighting. Not to punish Daniel, not to humiliate Vanessa. To make sure Lily never had to be afraid in her own home again. Rachel handed me a folder. "Everything's ready." Inside, certified bank records, cloud storage authentication, the ring footage, medical reports, photographs, Marjorie's statements, a full timeline. Nothing dramatic. Just facts, the kind that eventually speak for themselves. That evening I parked outside the Fredericksburg VFW Hall. Christmas lights wrapped the entrance. Veterans in sport coats greeted arriving guests. Local business owners carried wrapped toys for the charity auction. Old Bing Crosby recordings played over the speakers. It should have felt festive. Instead it felt like walking into a courtroom decorated for the holidays. Marjorie waved the moment she spotted me, wearing a bright green sweater covered in sequined reindeer. "Figured if we're ruining somebody's evening," she whispered, "I might as well dress for it." I laughed despite myself. "You're impossible to ignore. Been my greatest talent since 1974. Rachel joined us. No surprises tonight. Marjorie looked offended. I make no promises. Just then a familiar voice drifted from backstage. Lily, stand right here. Every muscle in my body locked. Through the half-open curtain I saw Vanessa kneeling beside Lily, straightening the bow on her red dress, Daniel adjusting his tie nearby, a photographer arranging lights. I turned to Rachel. Why is Lily here? Her expression hardened. She shouldn't be. Daniel had somehow brought her to the fundraiser. He wasn't just accepting an award, he was planning to put our daughter on stage as part of the show. I started walking. Rachel caught my arm. Rebecca. I have to get her. You will. Just not like this. Before I could respond, an event volunteer hurried over. Mrs. Hale, they're about to begin. I glanced toward the stage. Daniel was smiling confidently at the crowd, with no idea that the bank's regional compliance director had quietly taken a seat in the front row, that 2 child welfare investigators had slipped in through a side door, or that 3 sheriff's deputies now stood near the back of the room. He thought tonight was his victory lap. He couldn't have been more wrong. The lights dimmed as the MC stepped up. Good evening, everyone, and Merry Christmas. Applause filled the room, I barely registered it. My eyes stayed on Lily, standing beside Vanessa in a velvet red dress, white tights, little black shoes, her hair curled. From across the room she looked like the picture of a happy little girl. But I knew my daughter, she twisted the hem of her dress whenever she was scared, and she was doing it now. Daniel spotted me near the back. Surprise flickered across his face for a second, then vanished behind that same practiced smile I'd seen at bank dinners and church fundraisers, the smile that convinced everyone he was the nicest man in the room. He excused himself and walked over. Wasn't sure you'd come. I almost didn't. Probably better if you stay in the audience. I came to see my daughter. So did everyone else. His voice stayed even. Let's not make a scene. There it was again, the bait. Rachel had warned me. He wanted witnesses, another video, another chance to catch me losing control in public. I made myself breathe slowly. I only want to talk to Lily. You'll get your chance. After the ceremony. I'll decide when I see my daughter. His smile faded. You really haven't learned. Before I could respond, Vanessa appeared carrying 2 cups of coffee. Oh, she said sweetly, didn't realize our guest had arrived. Leaning hard on the word, as if I were visiting someone else's life. She bent toward Lily. Come on, sweetheart. Lily didn't move. Vanessa reached for her hand, and the moment she touched Lily's wrist, Lily flinched. Instinct took over. I stepped forward. Don't touch my daughter. Vanessa tightened her grip. She's fine. Let her go. People nearby started turning. A phone came up, slow and deliberate, exactly what Daniel wanted. Vanessa smiled, almost daring me. I reached out and caught her wrist, not hard, just enough to stop her. For one dangerous second the room went silent. Daniel's voice cut through it, sharp and loud. Rebecca. Several people gasped. A man near the stage raised his phone higher. I recognized the trap again, same setup, different room, different audience. I let go of Vanessa's wrist and stepped back. I'm not doing this. Vanessa looked disappointed. Daniel looked even more so. Rachel appeared quietly at my side. You caught yourself. Barely. That's enough. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but anger. The army had taught me how to stay steady under fire. Nobody had ever taught me how to stay steady while someone frightened my child. The investigator walked over and knelt beside Lily. Honey, would you like to come sit with me for a while? Lily nodded immediately, and without looking at either Daniel or Vanessa, reached for the investigator's hand. That small decision said more than any testimony could have. As they walked off, Daniel tried one more time. You see? Rebecca upset her. The investigator turned around slowly. No, she said, perfectly calm. Your daughter looked relieved the second she got away from both of you. For the first time all night, Daniel's confidence cracked. I slipped into the restroom, locked myself in a stall, and cried. Not from weakness, but because I'd come within inches of giving Daniel exactly what he wanted. Rachel found me a few minutes later. You okay? I wanted to hit her. I know. Wanting revenge doesn't make you a bad person. She handed me a tissue. What matters is what you do next. I wiped my eyes. I'm done thinking about revenge. I just want the truth now. She smiled. That's even more dangerous for them. Outside, applause erupted. The MC's voice rang out. Please welcome this year's Community Family Champion, Mr. Daniel Hale. Daniel walked out to a standing ovation, waving to the crowd, with no idea the bank's compliance director sat in the front row with a thick investigation file, or that 3 sheriff's detectives had taken seats along the side wall. His speech was about to begin. So was the end of every lie he'd built. He soaked in the applause, shaking hands with veterans and business owners as a slideshow played behind him. Welcome home ceremonies, kids hugging parents in uniform, flags, Christmas trees. Then one of my deployment photos appeared, showing me with my unit overseas, captioned, "While Rebecca served our country, Daniel served their family." My stomach turned. He'd built an entire speech around my service, without asking me. He adjusted the microphone. Thank you. This award doesn't belong to me alone. He smiled at the crowd. It belongs to every military spouse who quietly holds the family together while their loved one serves overseas. More applause. He looked humble, grateful, almost believable. I've always believed our daughter deserved stability. A dramatic pause. And sometimes that meant making difficult choices. Vanessa beamed from the front row. He gestured toward her. I couldn't have done any of this without Vanessa. More applause. Someone behind me murmured, "What a wonderful family." Rachel leaned toward me. Almost. Military life demands sacrifice, Daniel continued, looking straight at me now, and forgiveness. Then, smiling, I'm grateful Rebecca could join us tonight. A spotlight swept over to me. Heads turned. Daniel extended his arm. Rebecca, would you join me on stage? Every eye in the room turned toward me. Rachel whispered, "Stay calm." I smoothed the front of my dress uniform and walked up. Daniel reached out as if we were about to pose for a family portrait. I ignored his hand and turned instead to the MC. May I say something? He hesitated, then nodded. Of course. I stepped to the microphone. My husband is right about one thing. The room went quiet. Military families make sacrifices. I looked at the veterans seated up front. You know that better than anyone. A few nodded. But sacrifice only means something when it's honored. I turned to Daniel. Not exploited. His smile disappeared. I reached into the folder Rachel had given me. Mr. Reynolds, would you mind playing one short video? Daniel's expression shifted instantly. What video? The chairman looked to the AV technician. Rachel quietly handed him a flash drive, and seconds later the screen went black, then lit up with the recovered footage. The front doorway, December 22nd, Lily standing exactly where I'd found her. The room watched in silence as my daughter's trembling voice played. Daddy said if I let Mommy in, she'll hurt me again. A murmur ran through the crowd. Daniel stepped toward the screen. That's completely out of context. No one answered. The next clip started, Vanessa over Lily. You're not crying hard enough. A pinch. A scream. Daniel adjusting the angle. Then his own voice, filling the ballroom, let her cry a little more. He looked into the lens. When Rebecca loses it, we'll finally have what we need. Nobody applauded now. Nobody moved. The room was so quiet I could hear the furnace humming overhead. Daniel grabbed the microphone. This has been edited. Rachel walked calmly onto the stage with certified documents. It hasn't. She handed copies to the chairman, the sheriff's detective, and the bank's regional compliance director, who stood up. Mr. Hale, effective immediately, you're being placed on administrative suspension pending a fraud investigation into ethics and financial misconduct. Daniel stared at him. What? The detective stepped forward next. We also have a warrant regarding evidence tampering and child abuse allegations. Vanessa shot to her feet. This wasn't my idea. Daniel turned on her. What are you doing? You said nobody would ever find those videos. The room erupted. They turned on each other, loud and unguarded, the microphones still live, every accusation echoing through the hall. You told me we'd get her pension. Vanessa shouted. You're the one who kept hitting the kid, Daniel shot back. Gasps rippled through the audience. Marjorie leaned toward the woman beside her, loud enough for half the room to hear. I believe that's what lawyers call terrible timing. A few stunned laughs broke the tension. I stepped to the microphone one last time. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult either of them. I just looked at Daniel. You used my service to build your reputation. Then at Vanessa. You used a 4-year-old to help destroy her own mother. Finally, at the room. You don't get to call that family. At that moment Lily slipped free of the investigator and ran across the ballroom, straight into my arms. I dropped to my knees and held her as tightly as I could. For the first time since I'd come home, she wasn't afraid. People sometimes ask if justice felt as good as I'd imagined. Honestly, not really. Relief feels different than revenge. The hearings stretched across the following 9 months. Nothing happened overnight. Daniel was suspended from the bank within a day of the fundraiser and fired a month later, once an internal audit confirmed he'd misused financial authority, falsified documents, and funneled money into a fake consulting company. Vanessa took a plea deal instead of risking trial, probation, mandatory parenting and anger management classes, and a permanent order barring unsupervised contact with Lily. Neither of them ever admitted they'd planned it from the start. They didn't need to. The evidence said it for them. The divorce wasn't easy. There were days I wanted to quit, days I wondered if fighting had only made things harder on Lily. Family court doesn't move at the speed of heartbreak. It moves at the speed of paperwork. Eventually the judge granted me primary physical custody. Daniel received supervised visitation once he completed counseling. He was also ordered to repay part of what he'd taken, not all of it. Some was simply gone. The refinance on the house couldn't be undone, and every time we drove past that neighborhood, Lily went quiet. One afternoon she looked out the window and whispered, "I don't want to live there anymore." Neither did I. So I sold the house, not because Daniel had ruined it, but because Lily deserved somewhere every room felt safe. We rented a modest townhouse in Fredericksburg with white shutters and a small fenced yard, just enough space for the two of us. The first night there, Lily ran from room to room laughing. "Mommy, nobody lives here but us." I laughed for the first time in what felt like forever. "No, sweetheart. Just us." My security clearance was eventually restored once the investigation cleared me of every allegation. Colonel Carter called me in one last time. "Got your new assignment orders." I looked down at the paperwork, stateside, Fort Belvoir. No more overseas deployments. "You requested this?" "I did." She smiled. "Any regrets?" I thought about it. The army had given me purpose. It had also taken me away from home. But the army had never betrayed me, people had. "I've served my country for 23 years, I said. "Now I need to serve one little girl." Colonel Carter stood and shook my hand. "I think that's your most important assignment yet." The following Christmas looked nothing like the one before it. No grand decorations, no expensive dinners, no towering tree. Just a small artificial one from Home Depot, homemade sugar cookies, hot chocolate, and a string of colored lights around the living room window. While we decorated, Lily opened a small box and found the ornament she'd made during our supervised visit, crooked glitter letters and all. Mommy came back, she read aloud, smiling. "Can we hang this one first?" "We absolutely can." She placed it near the top of the tree, then stepped back to admire it. "It belongs where everyone can see it." I realized she wasn't just talking about the ornament. She was talking about us. For a long time I thought coming home meant walking through my own front door. Now I know better. Home isn't a house. It isn't a title. It isn't even a marriage. Home is the place where your child feels safe enough to fall asleep without fear. If you've stayed with me this far, thank you for listening to my story. I'd genuinely love to know what you would have done, standing at that front door. And if someone you love has gone quieter than usual lately, don't ignore it. Sometimes the smallest voice is the one asking loudest for help. The end.